Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today we have 3 great stories. The first story: veterinarians can't work properly because of this woman's filthy nature. The second story: the cashier did everything that this Karen asked, was very polite, but she still complained about him to her superiors. What was wrong with these people? The third story: the dude was racist towards the owner and didn't even apologize when he recognized him. The first story is: when a Karen complains about tattoos, cleavage, immigration, and chooses to let prejudice stand in the way of her cat getting medical attention. I work as a veterinary nurse in a middle-of-nowhere town in Australia's southeast, and I had the most epic of Karens to deal with today. Due to the current COVID-19 restrictions on how many people are allowed in the building, we're running on a skeleton staff of 2 vets and 2 nursing staff, instead of 5 vets, 6 nursing staff, and 2 receptionists. And no more than 4 clients are allowed in the clinic, a maximum of 2 per household. If someone is coming in alone with their pet, then it's less. For example, there could be a parent and child together, or 1 person with their pet. Regardless of whether there's 1 accompanying human or 2, there's only pets from 2 different households allowed in, and they're to be on opposite sides of the waiting area. Small town life is a mixed bag, but usually people don't care about the restrictions, or what staff look like, as long as their pet is treated with love and expert care. Today, one of the 2 vets and their assigned nurse were in surgery with an animal badly injured by a car, which left my boss, the senior vet and owner of the clinic, and I to handle the walk-in cases. Just like a hospital, we triage our animals, and the more severe case gets treatment first. Enter Karen and a platoon of children. Okay, so it was only 3, aged approximately 16, 14, and 11, give or take. All male. We asked if there was a different time she could come back, or have someone look after 2 of her kids due to the restrictions. But nobody else is in here, so your numbers are fine. Just see my cat now. She was not having a bar of the explanation. That meant we would need to turn away other animals until police arrived to enforce the policy. She sent 2 of her kids outside. Now, I should mention that I live near the Alps, and it's winter here at the moment. These kids were not dressed for outside in the bitter cold. We told her to bring the kids back in, and asked her to please get someone to pick them up. She fiddles with her phone as I triage her cat, who's admittedly quite unwell, and Boss Dude prepares the consult room. I naively assume she's messaging people to help wrangle the kids, but I soon hear what's very obviously a YouTube drama video playing. As I start to ask her to please organize something, her cat pukes all over me, which she decides to blame me for, and pulls the famous "get me your manager" line. Here we go. I call out to Boss Dude to get the cleaning gear, and let him know that Karen wishes to speak about her belief that I made her cat barf, while I change my scrubs. I usually wear a long-sleeve t-shirt under my scrubs as an extra layer of protection for this exact reason, but didn't have a spare with me today, so when I return, my very tattooed skin is on show. Being a female who also happens to have the genes for an ample bust, there's a hint of cleavage at the V of my scrub shirt showing. Lights, camera, action. Kids. Whoa, cool. Look at your tattoos. They're colorful and awesome. Is that Viking inspired? Karen is slowly turning red, and her lips are tightly pressed against each other in disdain. Me. Thanks, guys. I love my tattoos, and it's always nice. Karen. Who do you think you are? This is entirely inappropriate for my boys. You should have some decorum and have some self-worth. Not this getting covered in tattoos for attention nonsense. I guess I know now why you got a job. Me. Actually, I have a master's degree and... Karen. You probably did favors. Me. No. I worked hard for 7 years. My tattoos cover scarring sustained in a serious car accident 11 years ago, and also tell my history as a Swede and a Viking lineage. And if a small amount of cleavage is going to scar your boys, or be a distraction to them, you need to teach them that bodies come in all shapes and sizes variations, and a woman is no less professional simply because she has a large bust. Karen, you're not even Australian? I thought you just had a mild speech impediment. So you also stole a job from an Australian. Wow, you're a piece of work. Boys, let this be a lesson to you about how unfair immigration is. I refuse to let an immigrant who sets a bad example to my boys with tattoos and her boobs practically falling out of her shirt treat my poor cat. Call in more staff, please. Me. Boss Dude. Let me just say, I was born and raised in Spain and moved here 20 years ago. Let me show you my tattoos. The staff currently in emergency surgery also have tattoos. One is on loan from New Zealand, and the other still has a British accent. Let me point your attention to the photos of all of our staff on the wall over there. And let me point out that all of our vets have at least 1 visible tattoo, and half of our nursing staff have at least 1 visible tattoo. Now, do you want your cat seen to, or are you going to neglect your cat's medical needs in the hope of finding another vet clinic anywhere nearby that can take her on short notice? The nearest clinic is nearly an hour away, and they're absolutely flat out. Karen, I don't want uncultured barbarians mutilating my cat. The kids are now begging her to stop and to just let us treat the cat, who's going downhill very quickly at this point. The youngest starts crying and says they've sent a message to their dad to get them or switch over and be the human present instead of Karen. Karen refuses, but she also refuses to call other clinics. She's absolutely screaming at my boss to call in one of the other vets and another nurse. I explain it will take about 90 minutes for both another vet and nurse to arrive, which is 90 minutes this cat does not have, and ask, are you that pig-headed that you'll let prejudice stand between your cat and urgent medical attention? Would you demand a different nurse or pediatric registrar in a hospital if one of your kids were so unwell they needed emergency medical care? She says nothing. The kids are all crying. Boss dude, Katie Mouse, please contact RSPCA to report the animal abuse while I contact the police. Karen, you wouldn't dare. Get off your high horse. We make the calls. She calls our bluff. She continues sitting there demanding other staff get called in. We have someone arrive out the front with an animal having a seizure, and we take them straight through to the consult room, lock the front door so nobody else can come in, and in doing so we open ourselves up to an enormous fine for having more people in the building than allowed. Karen starts shrieking things along the lines of, how dare you? This is absolutely taking unprofessional to the limits. You're killing my cat. We were here first. As we're dealing with the emergency, police arrive via the rear door and came in to deal with EM, who's still shrieking and totally ignoring her 3 very upset kids. One of the cops did a head count and I just said, emergency. She wouldn't leave, and we weren't going to send the kids out in the cold. One officer starts talking to Karen, and the other has to answer Boss Dude's phone, which was RSPCA calling back giving us authority to seize the cat, to treat it without her permission, based on the symptoms described. This was glorious. The look on the second officer's face goes from a this is winning face to I need to go relay this to her, don't I face. The emergency case resulted in euthanizing the animal fairly soon after the officer held the phone, while we got the authority regarding Karen's cat. So we went out with the officer to explain the authority we had been granted, and that if she refused, police could enforce it and remove the cat from her. More shrieking. The kids understood this meant the cat would be treated and cheered. Karen's surprisingly lovely husband arrived to deal with the kids, and was amazed to see so much commotion. After we examined the cat and looked at the imaging, our hearts absolutely shattered. There was nothing we could do. We went out to let the kids and awesome dad know. They were allowed to the consult room to spend time with the cat before we euthanized. Karen was screaming, "This is all your fault. You killed my cat. Now you need to give me one of your kittens for adoption for free, and I'm absolutely not paying the consultant murder fee. I'm speaking to my lawyer tomorrow and suing you." She never joined the family to say goodbye to the cat. Anyway, rounding this up, awesome dad apologized profusely and paid, while Karen yelled at him not to, and the kids asked if they could give us high fives. Obviously, awesome dad is the one doing the parenting, raising the boys well. We all doused our hands with sanitizer, and it was high fives all around. On their way out the door, awesome dad commented on one of my Norse helm tattoos and flashed his on his forearm. Turns out his mother grew up very close to the town I grew up in, before moving from Sweden as a teenager. After dinner, I got a message from Boss Dude, which was forwarded from the clinic email. A screenshot of a post on Facebook from the eldest of the 3 kids, talking about how he got to see that tattoos are really just skin deep, when 2 awesome vet staff dealt with the nightmare of my mother professionally, and while under personal attack, they worked tirelessly for the family cat, which was the sweetest thing. A surprisingly wholesome end to a day I'm glad to put to rest now. The second story is, aren't you glad I'm here to make sure you do your job? So just a bit of context. This happened 2 weeks after I started working as a cashier for a very highly regarded northeastern US grocery store chain. It was my first time working a late night shift, so this took place at about 9 p.m. There's 3 of us cashiers working at the time, and I have no one in my line. A woman wearing a full-length coat and white gloves comes into my line. She's also sporting the "May I speak to your manager" trendy bob haircut. Let's call her Karen. Karen looks at the conveyor belt and says, "Oh, well, your belt is kinda dirty. I'll just go to a different line." I want to note that the conveyor belt wasn't really dirty. At the time, the belts were pretty old and had a lot of wear, so customers assumed they were dirty when really it was just marks from age. Regardless, I turned to find my bottle of spray cleaner, and there isn't one at my till. Being new, I didn't dare leave my till because it was against the rules, and I was still in the period of time that I really wanted to make a good impression. I figured I could just ask my manager for a spray bottle when I got back from break later in the evening. Lo and behold, Karen returns about 30 seconds later. "All the other cashiers have people in line," she said. Then she snapped her fingers at me and pointed at the belt. "You can clean it for me." I stared at her for a second. a little surprised that she had just ordered me to do something. All right, that's no trouble. Just give me a second to find a spray bottle. I saw one of my managers nearby, and I asked them for a spray bottle, and they handed me one from one of the empty tills, and I started to wipe down the conveyor belt. The Karen stood way too close to me as I was doing this. Don't forget to spray the scanner, she said. I give her the politest affirmative of, don't worry, I won't. 2 seconds later, as I'm still wiping the belt, Karen said, are you going to spray the scanner too? I'll get to it, ma'am. I've just got to finish wiping the belt first. I finished wiping the belt and stepped back into my spot next to the cash register because it's easier to wipe the scanner from that angle instead of working around the credit card machine and such. You didn't wipe the scanner, Karen shrieked. I'm just getting to it now, ma'am. I wiped the scanner and was at the end of my rope. I just wanted to get this banshee out of there as fast as possible. I hurriedly pushed her groceries through and bagged them faster than I think I've ever done anything. I wanted this bee gone. Just as I was grabbing her receipt to hand her after she paid, Karen said this in the snobbiest voice I've ever heard from someone. Aren't you just so lucky that I came through to make sure that you were doing your job? I just stared at her for a moment. Seriously? Did she think I was just slacking off or whatever? I just gave her the most forced smile I could muster and said, have a nice evening, ma'am. The Karen leaves and I think that's the end of it. I complained to my manager and one of the other cashiers while I was on break. Then I went to get a snack and a drink. When I came back from break, my immediate manager told me that the night manager wanted to talk to me in the office. I went in and NM just said, hey, so we got a call about you tonight. Without skipping a beat, I said, was it from the lady who wanted me to clean the belt? NM raised an eyebrow, surprised that I knew what it was about. Well, yeah, her name is Karen. Can you just tell me what happened with her? I told NM the whole story down to the tiniest details, and he just said, yeah, well, she seemed disproportionately upset about your attitude. She said that she left a note in the box, but that wasn't enough, so she called the store. Did she say what about my attitude was the problem, I asked? No, she just kept saying the phrase attitude problem, which you don't seem to have, so we'll call this a learning experience. Weeks went by, and finally my team leader called me into the office. TL said, hey, so this is a couple of weeks old, but we got a note about you in the comments box. I just smiled, shook my head, and said, was it from Karen? TL stared at me. How'd you know her name? NM already talked to me about her because she left the comment, and then called the store because she was really upset about my attitude. TL tossed the comment sheet in the trash and shook her head. Customer service can be hard. Don't worry about this and just go back to your till. You're fine. The last story is racist against the owner. The cast, me, EJ, entitled Jerk, and IS, important son. I work at a popular high-priced restaurant, and we get new employees often, but the owner, who's also the general manager, hired some new faces, and he put me in charge of them. I'm not a manager, and the actual managers that were working with me made it clear that they were putting the responsibility of EJ onto me. Immediately, I didn't like this EJ. He was unprofessional and rude, but when he found out he was older than me, all respect went out the window. I'm a rather short, chunky girl, and he belittled me on my weight as well as my age. EJ was also racist and homophobic to me as well, and let other staff and guests know his opinions very aggressively. On to why he was fired. The owner of restaurant next door is friends with the owner of the restaurant I work at. They're business partners and have corporate ties with each other. This is where IS comes in. IS is the son of the owner next door. IS, his father, and my general manager are on a poster in the back room. The families owned the restaurants for years. I don't know their race, but I know they're from overseas. I don't know where exactly, but I'm assuming Israel. Anyway, they have a thick accent, and sometimes it's hard to understand them the first try. IS walked in and I had a difficult time understanding his accent, and after a few minutes of trying to understand each other, we got his order in. EJ got annoyed listening to my conversation and started making comments like learn English and mumbling while making sounds. IS heard this and layered on his accent, making it even harder and playing it up while asking EJ questions about our food. EJ was notably peeved off and started yelling racist and anti-immigrant things at IS. He ended his rant with, if I was the owner, I'd ban all T-heads like you. IS perked up in an almost perfect English, with little detectable accent, said, I am the owner. EJ went off again, claiming how he was lying, until he realized IS was one of the co-owners. You would expect an apology, right? One last-ditch effort to save your job? Not from EJ. He then claimed that it wasn't fair for IS to be a co-owner, because it was taking away jobs from Americans. IS smiled very big and asked me to write a witness report while he called my general manager and his dad. The next day, EJ was gone, and I hopefully never have to deal with him again. I hope you love these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out.